this great music with. So, I'm going to keep the talking to a minimum, get to the good stuff. I'm going to kick this off with a chart by Benny Carter entitled Amoroso. Hey, thanks. Once again, that was Benny Carter's Amoroso. On that one, we heard from Natalie back here on the trumpets. Our lead tenor, Sam Ross, over here. And from our drummer duo, Orson Sproul was on the drum set. And Milo Savage was on the congas at that time, but had a little bit of a switch. So this concert, we got my little baby Mingus kick. I don't think I've programmed any Mingus stuff in the last 5 years since I've taken over the band. And for whatever reason, the mood suited me. And so I broke this stuff out and it ended up being a whole lot of fun. Way more fun than I was expecting. So as you may or may not know about Mingus's music, he is definitely going to keep you on your toes. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, go on ahead and tighten up your seatbelt, put on your chin strap, because it's guaranteed to be an adventure and a hell of a ride. And this tune is certainly no exception. So this is the first of two Mingus tunes we playing on this concert. This is his tune entitled Sue's Changes. who do you hear from? We heard from Jose Madrano back there on bass. No self-respecting niggas trying to complete without a bass solo on it. We heard from Vince Milan on alto. Heard from Big Bantel on tenor. Also heard from Killian Redmond back there on trombone. Did I miss anybody? I think we're all right. So we're creeping up on that last tune, but before we do, there are a handful of folks here who are playing their very last JCL concert. For the rest of their careers, they're going on to graduate school, they're going on to a metropolitan area to go play, and they've been here for at least 2 to 4 years, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge you properly in the big show here. So, graduating senior on tenor saxophone, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sam Ross. Graduating master's student, Mr. Vince Milan. Anybody else? You guys are still here. Of course. I was coming to you, man. I swear to you, I didn't forget you. Graduating with a master's, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jose Madrano on bass. And last, but most certainly not least, back there on congas right now, but drum set earlier on, this is Mr. Orson Sproul. Graduated with his master's. Thank you, gentlemen, for a beautiful 2 to 4 years. We appreciate you. It's been a pleasure to have you here in the program. And I hope that you found your degree, your time here worth it, and felt like you got your money's worth, but more importantly, you felt like you're walking out of here with a little something that you couldn't get everywhere else. So just know that it was an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us. We appreciated you to your very, very core. So thank you, folks. All right, so we are now at that bitter end of the concert. Well, listen, I have a standing motto that sends you out of here with a little pep in your step, a little muscle in your hustle, and this concert is absolutely no exception to that rule. You may have heard this chart before. We're going to remove the Hollywood from it, but it is absolutely an absolutely fantastic chart. I'm really looking forward to presenting it. On this one, we're going to hear an awful lot from our drummer, the hardest working man in show business on this chart, Mr. Lionel Savage. Man, you'll understand what I'm talking about here shortly. This man right here. How old are you, Milo? Oh, I mean, I can take that man out for a scotch when it's over with. You might have earned it the old-fashioned way. We're also going to hear from Killian Redmond back here on trombone. This is John Watson arrangement of the Juan Tarzal classic tune made popular in the Ellington Band. This is Tarzal's tune entitled Caravan. Hold on tight, folks. It's about to get ugly. minor staff, we praise the Lord.